So today we're going to make a grid for an A4 document. Grid systems can be quite complex and difficult to set up, but today we'll do quite a simple, flexible A4 grid. So first things first, let's start a new document. We'll go for an A4 page and we'll set our bleed for 3mm across the top, bottom, inside and outside. Click OK. Next, we'll call up our pages in Window, Pages. So the first thing we want to do is select our master page and double click to open those. We want to design the grid on our master pages so that it is throughout the whole document. Otherwise, it will only appear on a single page. So we want to select both pages and make sure that both pages are grey. Next, we want to adjust our margin and columns. We do that by going to Layout, Margins and Columns. Once we're here, we're going to adjust our top, bottom, and inside and outside margin. If we move the top margin down to, say, 15mm, you should see this line drop down. We want to raise the bottom, so we will make the bottom, we'll go for 18, in fact let's go for 20mm. The inside we will go for a 15, and the outside we will go for 13. Now we want to set our columns up. I find that columns that are divisible by 3 work really well. So we'll go for a 6-column grid today, and we will set our gutter to 5mm. The next thing that we need to do is actually add our baseline grid. But before we do that, let's view our grid. So we go up to View, Grids and Guides, and Show Baseline Grid. Now, because I'm on a laptop, you can't actually see the baseline grid. So let's go and change something in the preferences so that we can actually see our grid. To change the grid, we go to inDesign, Preferences, and Grids. The first thing that I want to do is change the color of the grid to light grey. This is going to be easier on the eye. The next thing is to change relative to the top margin. This will keep our grid within the text box. We don't want it starting at the very top of the page. We'll also start the grid at 0mm rather than 12.7mm down the page. The increments is fine for 12 point, and the view threshold will set to 50% so that we can view it on our laptop. One more thing that we want to look at is grids in back. Grids in back will put the grids at the back of the page. So if we have a picture on the screen, we won't actually see our grid. The picture will cover it. This is a personal preference, but I would prefer my grids to be in front of the picture so that I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to click that off, but it's up to you if you do that or not. And there is our baseline grid. Now, if we click on the magnifying glass and zoom into the bottom, we can see that the bottom of our grid is just slightly smaller than the baseline grid. So we want to line that up so that it's a perfect fit. We do that by going back into Layout, going to Margins and Columns, and changing our bottom. So we'll go slightly closer to the bottom and we'll say 19mm. So now we can see the bottom of our baseline, and we'll work so that our bottom of our margin and the bottom of the baseline touch perfectly. So we tweak that by adding a few points to our millimeter. We'll try 19.5 and then we'll try 19.6. 19.55, and I think that's about right. We can now hit OK and see our grid. Now let's add some horizontal rows to build up a modular grid system. We know that we're going to use some quotes and some smaller images from our scamps, so this will make it a lot easier to line things up and design on the page more quickly. So we do that again by going into Layout, and this time we say Create Guides. We've already set up our columns, so we don't need to do that. So we'll just concentrate on the rows right now. And because our baseline grid was set to 12 point, we will set our gutter to 12 point, and it will line up perfectly with our baseline. We can set the number of rows to anything that you like. Because of the way that our scamps were, I think we'll go for something like 9 rows and see how this looks. And I think that will work quite well. So that's our grid system. In the next tutorial, we'll use this grid to create a layout from one of the scamps that we produced.